Hello! Today's video is brought to you by the Minnetonka Coalition for Equitable Education, or the M.C.E.E. In this video, we will discuss the term anti-racism and what it means to practice anti-racism within public schools. We will 1. Define racism, 2. Evaluate colorblind ideology as a barrier to anti-racism, 3. Explain anti-racism as an active commitment to change. Racism is defined as stereotypes, prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism motivated by an individual's group membership, according to the Oxford Languages. Let's break down those words, stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. Berman and Prejudice, in their 2010 article, considered stereotypes the building blocks of racism, as they are the beliefs an individual has towards an ethno-racial group. When these thoughts impact one's attitude or emotional affect towards an ethno-racial group, it transforms into prejudice. From there, it can intensify and result in discrimination. These are actions against an individual. Think of your racist uncle at Thanksgiving. At the beginning of the day, he's commenting how black people are not hardworking. This is a biased opinion. At noon, after 2 drinks of alcohol, he grimaces, referring to black people as lazy and full of complaints. His emotional reaction when making this comment reflects his prejudice. At 5 p.m., after 4 more drinks, he's threatening to call the cops on your black neighbors because their music is too loud. That's discrimination. Racism can take the form of microaggressions, discriminatory behaviors, to systematic and institutional oppression, where laws unfairly treat distinct ethno-racial groups. The problem with a lot of white Americans is we view racism as a binary. You're either racist or you're not racist. White Americans reserve the label of racism for the most extreme and visible acts of discrimination. Why do they do that? We are so glad you asked. This is where colorblind ideology comes in. Colorblind ideology is when you refuse to acknowledge someone's race as one of their many identities. It means you refuse to acknowledge how their race influenced their lived experiences. If someone refuses to acknowledge race or consider it a factor in a situation, they may fail to recognize when they themselves are engaging in racist behaviors, such as microaggressions. Colorblind ideology sounds like, I don't see color, or there is only one race, the human race. Colorblind ideology is prevalent because of the American values of equality and meritocracy overshadow how someone can perceive racism. Here's how equality and meritocracy reinforce colorblind ideology. An Asian friend may come up to you and talk about how they missed out on a job and think they were discriminated against because of their race. If you strongly believe in equality, you may respond with, "No way. Everybody probably gets treated harshly." If you strongly believe in meritocracy, you may respond with, "Well, maybe you're just not the most qualified candidate." By refusing to acknowledge someone's race, people will refuse to acknowledge how race can play a factor in treatment and opportunities. Ironically, people preach the colorblind ideology because they don't want to be racist, but they actually end up perpetuating racism.
So what is anti-racism then? Anti-racism is the acknowledgement racism is a systemic issue and political, economic, and social barriers exist which target Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or BIPOC. Anti-racism includes actions to directly combat and eliminate those barriers. Like racism, anti-racism exists within systems. At the low end, it includes standing up against offensive jokes or microaggressions. Further out, anti-racism includes voting and using your career as a platform to fight against injustice, whether that be as a teacher, lawyer, doctor, or as a local activist. Anti-racism sounds simple, but it isn't always so easy. So why do people allow racist events or actions to happen around them? Well, the biggest one, is ignorance. You don't realize it's racist. In this racialized system, unfortunately, there are countless jokes and or stereotypes that have a historical basis or are straight up offensive. For example, asking your Black friend, "Why do you talk white if you're Black?" Some may see this as a compliment, but what you're doing is implying that Black people can't talk properly or correctly. In another way, the individual is saying Black people can only speak in broken English or like some ignorant thug. Do you see how this statement is offensive but is dropped on the daily? 2, it can be exhausting. Battling racism can sometimes feel like putting the world on your shoulders, especially for BIPOC. People constantly feel invalidated and discredited. People are so fast to say, you're being too sensitive, or you're making it about race. Well, if a BIPOC person says it's about race, then it is about race. 3, anti-racism forces us to be honest with ourselves. Have we been racist before? Are we part of the problem? There is this fear associated with racism, but the thing we need to recall is that we are all in an inherently racist society. So it's up to us to be open-minded, respectable, and willing to educate ourselves to be anti-racist. 4, the fear of ostracization. People are afraid of losing friends or family after having an argument, which causes a lot of people to be silent, but this continues to perpetuate the culture that being racist is acceptable. Yeah, I watched your video, you may ask. But now tell me how anti-racism can be incorporated into Minnetonka. Well, for starters, 1, the schools can make it a point to educate and protect their students from microaggressions and or stereotypes. Microaggressions represent teachable moments for all students and staff and faculty. Schools should focus on answering the question of what are these microaggressions and what do you do when you hear them or experience one. 2, schools can look at achievement standards and the accessibility of all upper level classes. Are white students and BIPOC students testing the same? If there are differences in scores, can it be tied back to the opportunity gaps when it comes to education? 3, do white students and BIPOC students have the same access to funding? Are resources being allocated in an equitable manner? 4, promote diverse student groups and diverse student activities. One of the biggest key is creating visibility and agency among BIPOC students. So that has been today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to follow the M.C.E.E. on our social media sites. Thank you.